If you ask your ex for another chance and they say, no, never again, it can be devastating. But I need you to know that in many cases, all hope is not lost. There is still something you can do that will change your ex's mind. But it will only work if you handle the situation carefully, take it slow, and follow my advice. I'm Brad Browning, and as a breakup coach, I've helped tens of thousands of people win back their exes. And many of those exes have said similar things. They've said, it's over, we're never getting back together, I don't love you anymore. And I know how much those words can hurt, especially coming from somebody who you truly love and want to spend your life with. But the worst thing you can do right now is let these emotions overwhelm you and cause you to lash out, give up, or fall into a pit of depression. What you need to do instead is take the problem head on. So I'm going to ask you to face the truth about what your ex is saying, work to understand the feeling behind those words, and then we'll talk about how you can use this knowledge to really win them back. Now, I'm not suggesting that your ex doesn't mean what they say. You shouldn't doubt their seriousness or downplay their feelings. Really, the worst thing you could do right now would be to ignore what they're saying and keep pushing forward regardless of what they say. Instead, you need to look at what they're actually saying and then go deeper to try to understand what they hope to achieve. Because let's be honest, this really is a very harsh statement from your ex. And most of the time, an ex is not going to want to hurt you or your feelings really at all in this way. And they'll only say it if they feel it's truly necessary. So why do they feel like it's necessary to hurt you like this? Well, it's usually going to be for one of these reasons. And reason number one is you did something unforgivable. So if you hurt your ex in a major way, then obviously there's a good chance that they really are done for good, and they just want you to know that. So maybe you lied to them repeatedly, betrayed their trust, or cheated on them. Now, that being said, cheating isn't always impossible to come back from. I actually made a video about winning your ex back after cheating that I'm going to link to in the description below and in the corner here that you should check out after this one if that's the situation you're in. But I won't lie to you, this is one of the worst situations that I'm going to cover in this video because it likely means that your ex really is done and they intend to move on. And reason number two is they're just trying to get space from you. When your ex shuts you down like this, a pretty common reaction is, wow, they hate me. They must really be serious about this breakup. And while that can be true, it often has more to do with how you've been treating them since the breakup rather than how they feel about getting back together. What I'm saying is, if you've been really aggressive about trying to maintain the connection, like you've been calling them or texting them nonstop, begging them to get back together, asking a lot of questions, and if you're not getting the hints that they're dropping, then it's quite likely that this is just an attempt to get some space from you. So while this does definitely mean that you do need to back off for now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're fully done, just that they're trying to get you to leave them alone so they can sort through their feelings. And the good news is that this is probably the most common situation I see, and it's often salvageable. And the third reason is they're just trying to hurt you or get a rise out of you. So it's possible that your ex is actually just trying to make you feel bad or even just get your attention. If you haven't spoken to your ex in a while and you haven't been particularly aggressive about trying to win them back, then there's a chance that this is their goal. Now, this is more common if you've hurt them in some way or if they're a particularly dramatic or vindictive person. So maybe you've been ignoring them. Now they want your attention, but they don't want you to know that they want your attention. So they pop up out of nowhere with a message like this, hoping that you'll take the bait. And they might even use it as an opportunity to slam you with some other insults that they've been holding on to. For example, we're never getting back together. You're just not emotionally mature and you only care about your career. I always felt like second best. Now, this is sort of like reverse psychology. They want you to think, how come they don't want me back? Or, I need to show them they're wrong. But again, this doesn't necessarily mean they're interested in you in any serious way. They could just be trying to get even with you or just trying to get that feeling of validation. So don't celebrate just yet on this one. And the fourth possible reason is they're trying to convince themselves. Now, this is one of the most common reasons that an ex will tell you it's over with absolute certainty. They may actually be internally conflicted, unsure whether breaking up really was the right choice. And by telling you in no uncertain terms that it's completely over and they'll never take you back, they're actually saying it to convince themselves that it's truly over and that there's no takebacks. Now, obviously, there are takebacks. Your ex can change their mind and beg you for another chance. But by telling you that they're never coming back, they're hoping to make themselves really believe that and stick to it. It's almost like, if I tell my ex it's really over, that will make sure I feel that way myself and commit to that decision. Needless to say, if this is the case for your ex, and like I said, it is common, it's definitely good news. It actually usually means your ex is struggling with their decision to end things, and there's a very good chance that you can change their mind and win them back. And finally, reason number 5 is you've had multiple breakups in the past. Now think about the phrase, never again. And in particular, focus on that word again. Now, if your ex has said that to you, this suggests that you and your ex may already have broken up and gotten back together in the past. And in my experience, getting back together is like a concussion. The more you've reconnected with somebody, the easier it is to do it again. And this has a lot to do with expectations. Often people are afraid to reconnect with an ex because they don't know how it's going to go. Is it going to be dramatic and complicated? Are they going to hold a grudge? Are we going to be able to recapture the magic? But once you've already done it once or twice, you know basically what it's going to look like, and you know that there's nothing to be afraid of. And that can make it much easier to get back together in the future. And this is why we see couples that are broken up, 5, 6, 7 times and are still trying. They just can't stay away. But while it may make it easier to reconnect, it can also be a barrier depending on your particular ex. Basically, they've seen it fail 2 or 3 or 4 times, and so they can't imagine that it's necessarily going to work out this time around. So it's definitely a little complicated, and I think often this confusion is what's inspiring their message. They're trying to shut the door for good and prevent another backslide. Still, the fact that they feel it's necessary tells you that you still have a chance, at least in a lot of cases. And I find that true with a lot of exes. The fact that they feel it needs to be said is actually an admission that there might still be feelings there. Those breakups that are truly final typically don't leave room for conversations like this. You break up and then you never see each other again because you have no reason to. You're just set on moving on. Now, if you're still not sure which situation you're in, if you're wondering what your ex is thinking and what you should do next, it's always good to get more information. And that is why I created my free quiz tool, to help you determine your chances of finding happiness with your ex. So go to breakupbrad.com/quiz now or after the video and just answer a few questions to find out the truth. It really is a powerful resource if you want to unlock your ex's heart again. Again, take it for free at breakupbrad.com/quiz. So by now, I presume you've decided which of these scenarios best applies to you. And as I said, if you cheated on your ex, you're going to want to watch that video that I linked in the description. But if that wasn't the reason for the breakup, then here's the game plan you need to follow. And it starts with step 1, which is to listen to your ex. It really is rare that your ex will say something like this in a vacuum. So typically, they'll say it in the context of a bigger conversation where they tell you why they feel this way, what's keeping them away from you and making them want to move on. So you need to listen to what they're saying and really internalize it. Now isn't the time to apologize or make excuses. Just take these things in and remember them for later. The issues that they point to in this conversation are going to be what you do want to address if you want to win them back. So maybe, they keep bringing up, how you don't take the relationship seriously, or that you aren't consistent with how you treat them, or you always take them for granted. At least consider that these may be legitimate reasons why your ex is telling you that there's no chance of getting back together. Now, it's also possible that your ex is flat out lying or simply hiding the real truth, to avoid hurting your feelings, to avoid an argument or a deep discussion about the real issues. But it's also possible there's some legitimate truth to whatever they're saying, and you should keep that in mind as something that you'll need to address down the road. And then there's step 2, which is don't argue with them. It's very tempting to defend yourself and lash out at your ex, bringing up all their issues in an attempt to shut down their criticism. But now is not the time for that. This is not about winning the argument. It's about winning their heart. So getting them to admit that they were wrong, or whining that they hurt your feelings, or convincing them that they're toxic, none of those things are going to help you. Don't try to change their mind at this point. There's no productive conversations to be had, much less conversations that end with the two of you deciding to give it another chance. And you also don't want to apologize and admit that you were the problem and that you need to be better and that they did nothing wrong. Listen, take accountability, and here's the secret: agree with them that the two of you shouldn't get back together. Yes, agree you shouldn't get back together. They're expecting you to fight them on this, so it's going to really blow their mind to hear you say something like, "You're right, this isn't working out. I think we both need space to work on ourselves." Now, this is the mature way forward, and it's also going to impress your ex to hear you acknowledge the problems between the two of you rather than just running from the truth. And it's also going to make them worry. You see, in many cases, your ex wants you to play a certain role after the breakup. Breakups are scary because they destroy the narrative we have about ourselves. Just a few weeks or months ago, your ex saw themselves as someone with a partner who they loved and who they could count on. Whatever was going on in the world, they knew that they had you by their side. But now what do they have? They're all alone in a scary world, and they don't know what's coming next. So now they're forced to create a new narrative so they can find comfort and just feel safe again. And one that they've chosen is this. They're the winner of the breakup. They ended things and they rejected your offer to reconcile. They're leaving you in the dust and bravely moving forward on their own. But when you agree with them, you destroy that narrative. And suddenly, your ex doesn't know how to feel. They think, maybe I'm not the winner here. Maybe I'm the loser after all. And that is when they're going to start to see that they made a big mistake by rejecting you. And step 3 is to give them space. Now remember, regardless of your ex's true feelings towards you, you have to take them at their word at this point. Act like you would if you truly believed that it was over, and leave them alone. You both need space right now so you can process the breakup and get back into a routine. Now this is the point where my advice will differ from what I typically tell people around giving their ex space. I don't want you to go no contact right this second. Because if your ex rejects you in this really strong way, if they say never again, and then you immediately stop responding to their messages and you block them, then there's a good chance you're going to look upset or petty. So instead, you want to stop contacting them in any way, but leave the door open for one more conversation that's from their side. Just one more. And it doesn't matter what it's about. It could be about the weather or their dog or a movie they saw that reminded them of you. If they reach out to you, you do want to respond to them as you would normally. Don't be overly friendly and don't try to stretch the conversation out. All you're trying to do here is to show them that there's no hard feelings and that what they said hasn't bothered you. And after the conversation has reached its natural end, that is when you want to officially go no contact with them. If you've seen my other videos, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if not, I've linked another video here down below and in the pop-up here in the corner for you to check out next. But now let's move on to step 4, which is sidestep the issue. So once you've made it through no contact and you have started to speak to your ex again, that is when you need to be the most careful. Because that's when people are going to be most likely to fall into a trap that's going to destroy the progress they've made with their ex. Because you're going to be tempted to just pick up the conversation where you left off. You'll want to convince them that they're wrong and that you did nothing wrong and that you can make it work if they'll just give you another chance. But you're really just opening the door for them to reject you all over again. So instead, you want to avoid that kind of conversation as best as you can. You might have to be a little sneaky, but don't bring up the relationship, hide your feelings, and just try to connect with them without making it about the past. If your ex is interested, they're actually probably going to help you out with this. Because they're also going to want to avoid this potential conflict by, just pretending that everything is normal. So if that does happen, use it to your advantage. Keep things light and flirty and fun. Eventually, you probably will have to have serious conversations, but there's absolutely no reason to rush into them right now. You have to rebuild the bond first. So start with something completely innocuous and unrelated to your relationship, like something that your ex will be surprised by or truly interested in. Now, I've also made a past video about this, what to say to your ex after no contact and how to naturally reconnect and rebuild their attraction for you, which you can watch next by clicking here in the corner or the link in the description below. And finally, step 5, be their friend if nothing else is working. Now, typically, I don't recommend being friends with your ex. In fact, I've made a whole video about the topic about why it's a bad idea. But it is possible that you're in one of the very, very rare situations where this actually does make a little bit of sense. So maybe your ex gets really upset, or maybe they keep bringing up the past and bugging you about mistakes you made. Or maybe they repeatedly stonewall you whenever you try to contact them. These are obviously all going to make it hard for you to even get your foot in the door. Now, in these cases, being their friend might be your only option, your only way back in. Now be careful here, don't get in too deep, but use friendship as an opportunity to open the door and show your ex that the two of you can spend time together without the world coming to an end. Now consider this as a last resort tactic only because, like I said, getting friend zoned by your ex is usually dangerous, which is why I'm including it here as basically a you already tried everything else strategy. And that does bring us to the end of this one. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Thank you for subscribing, for liking, for leaving your questions in the comments below. Good luck, and talk to you soon.